Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. No sign of Austin this week, unfortunately, but if he shows up midway through, he probably won't join us because he never does
I was going
when
to
that's
say
the scenario.
it makes it very hard for him to join us when he does that, mostly because of how we record it, but that's not immaterial. Now, last week I talked about how James was going to be our listener of the week whenever the laptop got here. Well, the laptop got here, so now
Well, there
I've
you
got it,
go.
and I'm using it right now, and it's zippity, and I forgot to plug in the hard wire, so we're doing this wireless.
All right, I'm wireless too to my router,
I
so
just completely forgot.
it's
So
fine.
usually I plug it in, but I haven't really tested it that much. It's it's one of his older laptops he's had kind of lying around. This is going to be sort of a stepping stone until I can get a new laptop of my own. But this is a great improvement simply because it's got nothing on it, but it is. Now
Yes,
the
being able to open images and web pages without it crashing is a great benefit.
yes, that is very nice. And I don't know if I'll be editing on this thing or not. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, to be honest with you. I think I might still edit it on my Mac, even though it's going to take longer. But the only issues I've had with it so far, because it is a little bit older, it's an older thing, is that I think there's something. Maybe some of the listeners can help me out with this. The screen, like, sometimes doesn't know that I've opened it, and I have to kind of fiddle with it and kind of mess around with it. I think there
Does
must
like
be.
pushing a button or touching the trackpad wake it
Doesn't
up?
know. No,
Not
basically
always.
there's like a I found a spot on like the very top of the keyboard, like a right next to the monitor, right
Mm-hmm.
next to the screen, where if I press down on that, it'll make the screen come on. So I figure that whatever magnet or whatever's in there has come loose.
Yeah.
I was gonna try to take it apart, but who's got time for that? So that's the only issue that I've had so far. That happened right
Okay.
away, within like a day of that happening.
Well, you can always connect it to an external display if it comes to that.
I thought about that. I did. I don't. I have an external display that I could use.
Mm-hmm.
This thing actually has docking capabilities as well, so I could just dock it
Yeah.
someplace. But the external display I have, I wall mounted it, and when I wall mounted it, the actual mount that is part of the display, it didn't come off. It wasn't. I mean, you can wall mount it, but you're supposed to leave the little foot thing on there. I was like, I don't want that on there, so I cut it off with a hacksaw. Now I'm stuck with this thing
Oh,
that I can't.
wow.
I have to
That's
wall.
that's an extreme solution to a wall
Wasn't
mounting.
extreme at all. It's the only thing I could do. Anyways, thank you, James, for the laptop. We will be using this in the interim until I can get my a new Mac or something similar to it.
Very nice. Thank you, James.
James, we also want to thank Shannon, who gave us a donation this week. He did that by going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And but left us a PayPal donation. And Bill bought a Stealth DC1 amp DAC from Emotiva. Same thing I've got, I believe, unless they've changed it. Isn't it the same thing I've got? I think it's the
I
same.
think it's the same because they always go to like it would be a DC2 by now if it had changed
Yeah.
anything. So,
So, which is a very nice little unit. Sits on my
mm-hmm.
desktop collecting dust right now because I'm not plugged it into anything in a while. But it's a very nice unit. And he let Emotiva know that he bought them and told it is based on our recommendation, which
Cool,
we
cool.
do recommend that.
Well,
So
thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Bill. Much appreciated.
thank you, guys. Now, this is the podcast where we answer your AV and home theater questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. To do that, you email us at tom@avrant.com, rob@avrant.com, or question@avrant.com. That gets you to Austin, our producer.
Mm-hmm. And
You
gets
can
you
also,
on the show for sure. That's the thing. You email one
yeah,
of us, maybe you'll end up on the show. We try. We do a pretty good job, I think. Rarely have things been missed, but if you email question@avrant.com, you will for sure be on the show.
that is true.
You know what? I want to thank Austin in his absence because he did a bang up job on the questions this week. Like,
Yeah.
once in a while, because he's busy too. His job takes him all over the place. He's on call and that. So, some weeks I've done a little bit more on it. Other weeks I've done like this week I barely had to touch it. So I'm like, yay, yay!
Good
That
job,
was
Austin.
awesome. Thank you, Austin.
Slow clap for Austin. Anyways, you can also get your question answered by going to www.avrant.com and leaving a comment there. You can go to facebook.com/avrant podcast and leave a comment or ask a question there as well. Twitter at First Reflect for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me, and at Austin Pond for Austin, our producer, who also has his own podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It is called We Watch Movies.
Yep.
Very interesting
It's an
podcast.
ambiguous title. Not
It is.
sure.
That's right. It's about raising, believe it or not. It's all about child raising, how to raise children, but not older children, just 0 to 1, very
Oh,
young infants.
wow.
Yeah, specified.
Okay.
It's very specific. Yeah, I think they were going for that. What to expect when you're expecting audience, because those
I
people
see.
are crazy. Now, personal news on my front. My wife started her new job today, so
Yay!
yay for
Congratulations.
employment. Yes.
Yes.
And so that's super duper exciting for her. And we've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to talk to her about it. She said that mostly she was signing paperwork and stuff, but she already has a project to work on. It's a consulting firm. She's a civil engineer, so she's already got a project. And before she started today, they said you're going to go out of town on Thursday to this project kickoff meeting and
Ah,
someplace. I'm like, okay, sounds like I'm not going to be here on Thursday. I'm like, fine.
thrown right into the thick of things.
Yes, which is good, which means they have a lot of work. In
Yeah.
consulting firms, that's what you want, is a lot of work.
Hmm.
Other than that, I'm just tired as always, so I'm glad that we don't have that many questions this week. Rob has...
Yeah, we got quite a few.
Well, not that many. Rob, and a lot of them are comments. Rob's got some news here. Vudu now has 11 movies, all from Warner Brothers, that are in Ultra HD with Dolby Vision HDR and Dolby Atmos sound. Now,
Very cool.
is it full Dolby uncompressed Atmos, or is it some sort of weird...
Well, Dolby Atmos,
Plus?
yeah, a Dolby Atmos can be sent in a Dolby Digital Plus lossy format. So if you get it on Blu-ray or the upcoming Ultra HD Blu-rays, it will be Dolby True HD with the Atmos extensions. But as far as I know, Vudu sends all of their audio in Dolby Digital Plus. So as far as I know, this is Dolby Digital Plus, which is still lossy, with Atmos extensions, because that is a thing that Atmos can totally do. So as far as I know, that's what it is. It's not quite the same as full lossless Blu-ray quality audio, but Dolby Digital Plus can get pretty darn close. So
somebody's going to ask, so there we go. Anyways, these movies are only available through the Vizio Reference Series TVs.
Because those are the only Dolby Vision TVs right now.
Oh, there you go.
That's the reason.
Yeah, but there'll be more brands and models coming in the future. The movies are Mad Max Fury Road. Yay! American Sniper.
Sure.
The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Has anybody seen that? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it.
I don't know.
It didn't do like gangbusters in the theater or anything, but
the preview looked pretty good. I like the preview.
It's got Alicia Vikander in it. Yeah, I like her.
The Gallows is on Netflix, and I think it keeps showing up on my queue that like you should watch this, and it doesn't have enough stars for me to care. San Andreas with The Rock. Man of Steel, if you want to be bored for 2.5 hours until they destroy New York.
It's got some crushing sound.
Jupiter Ascending, which I've never seen, but looked like it was going to be a hot mess. An amazing visual hot mess, but a hot mess. It's like, we have no time to tell you a story, so how about we blow some stuff up? Edge of Tomorrow,
AKA Live, Die, Repeat, since that's what they changed the title to on Blu-ray.
I did like that movie.
Yeah, it was good.
I like that one, Tom Cruise. And Into the Storm, which is that the one with Robert Redford? He's by himself.
No.
Which one's Into the Storm?
Robert Redford was I forget what that was called. Yeah, Into the Storm was, I don't know. I thought I was, in my mind, I picture it as like Twister out at sea.
It's not. Is that what George Clooney? It's not George Clooney. That's the one I'm thinking. That's Perfect Storm is what I'm
That's
thinking.
Perfect Storm. No, Into the Storm was like a boat purposely going into a storm, as far as I know.
Only in Hollywood. Anyways, we do have some movies that are in Dolby Vision. They just have regular sound, and we'll have a link for that.
Yeah, there's a list of those too. So
also Ken Denke. Is that how we say his name?
Yeah, Kurt Denke.
Did I say Ken? Kurt Denke from Blue Cables wrote a long, extremely comprehensive article that clearly explains pretty much everything you could possibly want to know about HDMI cables and what the new premium high-speed certification is all about. We'll have a link to that in the show.
Yeah, we've been talking about HDMI cables in general the past couple of weeks, and this is really good. I mean, Kurt Denke outdoes me as far as verbosity goes. He was a former lawyer, and so he does not mind putting words on the screen.
If you have a few hours to kill, you can it's not really take hours, but you can take 20-30 minutes to kill. You can go look up his response to Monster Cable when they tried
That's right. That was awesome.
That was that's a worthwhile read.
That was one of the ones where Monster Cable was like, "Oh, yeah, we withdraw our frivolous lawsuit because, whoops, we didn't know this is the guy who ran this company.
What? I don't remember what they were suing him over because it wasn't
It was
Monster.
over tartan cables and it was over trade dress because they said their tartan cables look too much like Monster cables. He's like, well, they're red, green, and blue component video cables because that's the standard that we have to adhere to. So saying that that's like trade dress violation because I have component cables that are black cables with red, green, and blue ends on them is ridiculous, and they did withdraw that lawsuit. But that's going back several years. This particular new article that we'll have a link for, you come to avrant.com. That's where we post all the links to these things that we talk about. It really does a good job of explaining that yes, cable quality does matter in digital cables, in HDMI cables, but that the difference is it's either error or perfect. Right, which is exactly what we were talking about when Lee was here a couple weeks ago and last week when we were going over those very silly Audio Quest comments in that video. So yeah, it's very clear, and he's saying basically they're getting their HDMI cables, the Blue Jeans cables, HDMI cables, recertified under the new premium high-speed certification, which gives them a fancy little sticker. But that they have changed nothing about their cables. So if you already bought their Series FE or their Series 1 HDMI cables in years past, don't worry. They still pass 18 gigabits per second like they were always supposed to, being that they were labeled high speed previously. So nothing has changed, but they're like, well, other cable manufacturers had some that were labeled high speed, didn't actually pass 18 gigabits per second. So that's why there's this new premium high speed thing where nothing changed, but you get a sticker. Good times.
I need to turn this. There we go. Oops,
Okay.
I probably just did something bad, but we'll see.
Let's hope not.
Well, the notifications were playing through the speakers, and
I see.
we're quickly trying to figure out how to turn this thing on. All right. Also, we've been recommending the BenQ HT 1075 for a while now. Well, there's new king in town of projectors under $1,000, and it's a new BenQ that directly replaces its HT 1075.
It's the update for this year.
And that's the 3050, the HT 3050. So you can see how those numbers progress. 1075. Slightly better in several ways, with slightly deeper black, slightly higher contrast, more accurate color, a little quieter, a longer lamp light. There's also the new HD 4050 that adds horizontal lens shift. Is that's going to be over $1,000 then?
That one is, yeah. It's 1,300, I think, MSRP for the 4050. But the 3050 and the 1075 that it's replacing, they have a little bit of vertical lens shift. They have no horizontal lens shift at all, but most DLP projectors in general, and then particularly projectors under $1,000, rarely do they give you any lens shift at all. You always have to use keystone correction if you're not able to get the edges perfectly lined up. So it's nice. They give you 10%. It's 10% of the image height is how much you can shift it vertically, which is a little, but it's enough if you're like off by a couple inches, right? Which is often the situation. So it's nice that it has that. But yeah. It's been reviewed, Projector Central, Reference Home Theater, Projector Reviews. All of them are very thumbs up on it. And they're like, hey, the HT 1075 is what we recommended last year. Now it's the replacement, the 3050. So there you go.
There you go. All right. We got some comments from last week's podcast, or last couple of weeks' podcast. Maybe some of these are a little bit older. Ray he was foaming at the mouth to talk about the mini DSP versus the Behringer feedback destroyer that Joseph asked about last week.
Yeah.
The gist of it is that if you have the MIDI interface, you have a way of doing a MIDI interface, the Behringer is more powerful.
Well, it gives you a greater number of parametric EQ filters.
Well, it makes it more powerful, basically. I mean,
yeah,
technically. But
more filters, a higher number of filters.
I thought it was higher resolution, too.
Well, I mean, you call it because I mean, if you have 6 filters, which is what the mini DSP gives you, versus 12 filters, which is what the Behringer feedback destroyer can give you, then that is greater resolution in the sense of finer.
And Ray made the I guess he asserted that the Behringer, if you have that mini interface, is actually easier because it just drops directly from Room EQ Wizard directly into the Behringer without an intermediate step. Whereas with the mini DSP, you have to take it, output it from Room EQ Wizard, and then import it into the mini DSP software, which then drops it in. It's like one extra step. I am totally I mean, as lazy as I am, and I am lazy, I am not that lazy, Ray. That said, still think that our, I mean, I still think
Well,
that
there's
most people are
one
going to be.
gigantic fly in the ointment, which is that the Behringer feedback destroyers are largely not available to purchase anymore. Like
Oh, there's that too. Yeah.
that's and the current model that's out there is considerably more expensive. So yeah, I mean, there's pluses and minuses on both sides. But it was interesting because Ray is a big mini DSP fan. That's the
He
thing.
is.
He's been one of the most vocal and visible supporters of mini DSP in general on forums and elsewhere. So it was very interesting for him to be like, well, the Behringer has its merits. So there's the pluses and the minuses if you're willing to get the MIDI cable, which is not expensive. It's
No,
like $25 or something like that.
but
But
still.
yeah.
One cable point. Anyways, over on Twitter, Dave, Coffee Man Dave,
Yeah.
who often interacts with us on Twitter, wanted to recommend a theater test app, which is available for the Apple TV from the TV OS store. It's a specific store just for the TV.
It's a
Apple
specific
TV.
store, yeah. If you get the new Apple TV 4, which now has third-party apps, they have their its own separate store that's just for the Apple TV. So you go there.
Anyways, it's $3. It says it has a
Mm-hmm.
base sweep that goes down to 10 hertz and some other decent tests. So if looking for something,
Yeah,
if
if you
you
want
think Gary,
a suite of audio tests and home theater tests, then there you go. $3.
and if Gary found the world's longest link. No, everything after the question mark. Whenever you get something like this, anything after the question mark
Oh yeah,
or from the
yeah,
question
it's
mark,
copy pasted.
yeah, it's a copy pasta thing. Anyways, he found a report suggesting that fewer TVs were purchased on Black Friday this year than last. Where 23% this year versus 37% last year
Of those pulled, yeah.
of those polled. Oh, of those people polled. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
which was 1,000 people going to actual retail stores. So a great deal in this article was made of, well, more people are buying everything on Black Friday online, so polling 1,000 people who are going to a physical store doesn't necessarily mean anything. So I'm like, well, great, thanks for that. Like,
Well, yeah. It does show a difference, but we don't
a
know
little bit, yeah.
what the why the difference is. So.
Well, maybe they're listening to us and being like, hey, we're going to hold off a year before we buy a 4K TV because I want
Maybe
one that
everybody's
has
looking at those
high
4K
dynamic
TVs
range.
over at Best Buy and going, I don't see any difference. I'm not buying that crap.
That's right.
And that curved one's stupid. They better be saying that.
In other words, they were thinking they were going to sell more 4K TVs over Black Friday than it appears that they did. So that's not a great thing for the industry in terms of their predictions not coming true. But I think it's a good thing for consumers because this is a silly year where they went halfway. And yeah.
Paul McDonald, our race car driver,
It is.
had Rob over to his place once again to set up his new. You're like his installer. Does he
Pretty
pay
much. Not really. He buys some of the stuff that I have lying around to sell, so that counts.
you? Does it break immediately? It was
Nope.
over. He had you over again to set up his new Minix Neo Android TV box. Reprogram his remote, his Harmony remote. You can't even reprogram. Okay, and troubleshoot his HDMI connections and to play with the puppy. Apparently,
Yes, he has a puppy.
so
That was
what
very
was his
fun.
HDMI issues?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. He in his theater, he has an older Denon. It has HDMI, but it only has two HDMI inputs and a single HDMI output. And I don't know the version number. It's I think prior to HDMI 1.3, so I think we're dealing with like 1.1 and 1.2 there. So since he has more HDMI devices than just two, and he still wants to just have a single HDMI output going from his AV receiver to his TV, I actually sold him one of my HDMI switches that I had. It's a 4-in, 1-out mono price HDMI 1.3 spec HDMI switch. So previously, before he got this Android TV box, we had everything except for his Telus cable TV box. Plugged into the monoprice switch. That monoprice switch's single output went into one of his Denon's inputs, and then the cable TV box went into the second Denon input. And that was because that cable box did not play nicely with that HDMI switch. For whatever reason, it would lose sync, and I mean, it would come back. The image and the sound would come back, but it was like flickering and losing sync every time you brought up the guide. It would drop out. So that kind of silliness, yeah. So we avoided that. Anyway, he got this new Android TV box, plugged it into the HDMI switch, and nothing was working. He wasn't getting any image whatsoever. And he tried going like directly to his TV, and that worked. So we're like, well, the box works, the HDMI cable works, something in this switch is wrong. So that's what we were troubleshooting, and what it came down to was the Android TV box defaulted to outputting 1080p 60.
Okay.
So that's like the highest resolution in HD resolutions before you get up to 4K. So going straight to the TV worked. Going from the Android TV box into his Denon into the TV worked. But going from the Android TV box into the HDMI switch did not work. Now, there was an error message that came up on the TV when we're going from the box to the switch to the TV. Thankfully, an error message that came up. Because
that's unusual. Usually, the HDMI just leaves you hanging.
Exactly. Normally, the TV was just saying, no signal. And we're like, well, who knows what's going wrong here? We were trying like all the different ports and all that. And then finally, it came up unsupported format, which was a new error message. Like, well, that means it's getting something, but it doesn't understand what it's getting.
Right.
So went in there, manually forced it down to 720p 60, and all of a sudden everything worked just fine. So there was a weird thing with his PlayStation 3 as well, which, like, if it went from the PS3 to the Denon to the TV, fine. If it went from the PS3 to the Switch to the TV, fine. But if it went from the PS3 to the Switch, from the Switch to the Denon, and from the Denon to the TV, didn't work until we dropped it to 720p 60. And then it worked just fine.
That's very bizarre.
It means that basically there's a little bit of signal loss that's going on. Is that in the cable? Is that in the Switch? Is that in the Denon? It's a combination of all three, because as soon as we had 4 devices connected together, there was just enough signal loss that sending things at 1080p 60 didn't make it all the way through. But going down to 720p 60 worked just fine. So again, going back to that like Blue Jeans article about HDMI, it's like, yeah, you know, once you reach you get just below the threshold of signal loss and you get error. It's not like, oh, the picture got a little fuzzier or the black levels got a little less deep or something. It's like, no, it's like, didn't work, worked. That's the difference.
Yeah. All right, let's get into our questions for this week. We have David, and he asks, have we or anyone whose opinion we trust in the listening test comparing Dirac Live with Audyssey Multi-QXT32?
Yep.
Is that Ray? Because that's the only person
that's
I can
Ray.
think of. The only person I can think of who's had any experience with Dirac is Ray.
Yeah. Ray has used the mini DSP 8-channel box that goes for, how much does that go for? $1,000?
Is it that? I thought it was more than that, but something like that.
No, I think it's $1,000. It's kind of expensive. Maybe I'll look it up here. But anyway, that's the one he used. It does have Dirac Live that's in there. So in his opinion, he enjoys a great deal that you can manually tweak it afterwards. Because with Audyssey Multi-QXT32, the target curves are set by Audyssey and you can't change them. If you want to change them, you would have to get Audyssey Pro, which is like a $700 upgrade, and then you have to have an actual Audyssey calibrator come in and do that, unless you do sort of back channel stuff to get your own Pro setup. So he enjoyed that you can tweak it manually. He enjoyed that you can save multiple curves, because again, with Audyssey, you get one measurement and they're like, well, that's the measurement. If you want to change anything, you have to remeasure it. Whereas in the Dirac Live box, I think it was 4 memories that you can set up for yourself. But on the flip side, Audyssey still offers dynamic EQ, which Dirac does not, which is where if you turn the volume below reference volume, Audyssey counteracts our nonlinear human hearing to make things seem linear to our ears. So Dirac doesn't have that. And also Dirac, since it is going through an external box, does not automatically set your distances, your delays for your speakers, because it can't know what potential latency is part of your USB cable connection going to your computer or something like that. So it doesn't set the distances and delays automatically. So overall, he preferred Dirac slightly. He thinks the end result sounds a little bit better than what Audyssey can do, but there's still some advantages to Audyssey too. So that's kind of where it is.
Whenever I hear somebody say the advantages are that you can do things manually, I go, yeah, but like how close are they? Because if to me, if I have to do it manually in order to make it sound better than what this other thing will do automatically, and if you let them both go automatically, it's just sort of, 6 of one, half dozen of another. or some slight differences, I go with the easier thing.
Hmm.
Not only for myself, but to recommend to people, specifically to recommend to people. I might tweak something. Most people do not tweak anything. So you can take that as whatever. Anyways, all right, John has a Yamaha RX A3050 with a 7.1.4 Atmos speaker setup. That'd be 7 speakers with 1 subwoofer and 4 speakers on over his head.
Yeah.
All the speakers have a crossover set to 80 hertz, and the 7.1 speakers go through a mini DSP 88A with Dirac. So he's using Dirac.
There it is. That's what we just talked about. That's the external little box.
So maybe John can pipe up here.
That's right.
Though I don't know if he has any
Well,
experience with
I'm
Audyssey.
assuming he likes it better than YPOW with RSC because that's what the 3050 has.
I would assume so. He listened to the Atmos Amaze demo disc, and on the powerful bass section, the bass sounded overwhelming, rattling things in the room. Then he tried putting the receiver into pure direct mode. To his surprise, that same powerful bass demo now sounded wonderfully clean and distortion free.
Mm.
He thought it sounded so much better this way, and he wants to know what is going on and whether his normal bass managed setup with the 80 hertz crossover is actually detrimental to all his other content as well.
Mm. Yep. It's an interesting one. Do you want me to just ramble on?
Well, the question here, because I didn't actually look into this, because I figured it would require me opening the manual, and I wouldn't have to do that. So the question here is, does Pure Direct actually disable the bass management? Because sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.
Pure Direct does. Pure Direct says whatever is coming in, I do not touch it. I don't tone manage it. I don't bass manage it. I don't put it through any sort of room correction. What comes in is what comes out. That's Pure Direct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
that means that whatever his speakers are all set to 80 hertz, but that doesn't make any difference because that's all gone. So everything's going to be playing full range, theoretically.
That's right.
And if the Atmos Amaze demo disc, so it should have all the different speakers in use, all of them trying to play full range, except for maybe the Atmos speakers, which are via Atmos cut off in some way. My thought here is the 0.1 is part of his issue. That by trying to by trying to EQ the room, EQ the subwoofer on when he's using Dirac, that is in some way he's no longer sitting in the right spot, or maybe he measured it in a weird way, or measured it and it's trying to do something not right. If that's the case, then you very well could be sitting in some sort of bass boosted area, or it could be when you're going in Pure Direct, the subwoofers are just turned down because they physically are turned down, and Dirac was turning them up in order to level match them with everything else.
Well, I mean, the EQ that he's done with the mini DSP, that should still be in play because that's happening after the pre-outs.
That is true.
So the Yamaha is hands off. The Yamaha isn't touching the signal, but then out of the pre-outs come the signal, goes into the mini DSP with Dirac, and Dirac still applies its EQ to that output signal. So the EQ is still in play, but here's what I think is going on here, because he mentioned in his email that the speakers he has are not full range speakers. On their own, they roll off at some area below 80 hertz. So when you go into Pure Direct, now everything is being sent to full range signal, and the subwoofer is getting nothing but the 0.1 LFE channel. That is the only sound going to the subwoofer now.
That is true.
And I'm not surprised that the LFE channel all by itself in that demo is very clean and distortion free. But what's missing now is all the bass from all the other speakers. Now that's 11 speakers in this case.
Yeah, from 80 or 60 whatever hertz it is down to
down. And that could be very significant. There could be a lot of deep bass that was mixed into, even if it's only your front, left, and right channels. There could be a lot of bass that simply isn't being played anymore once you go into Pure Direct. Now, this is where I go back into my whole rigmarole of, after doing all your setup, after doing your bass management, although I would do this before doing EQ, is playing a bass sweep through one speaker at a time. with your subwoofer active, with that crossover active and your subwoofer on, but actually making sure that that bass sweep really for real sounds nice and even and a smooth transition and doesn't have a big hump in it from every single speaker. Now, when you're talking about doing it through 11 speakers, yeah, that's a lot of time. So I can see why nobody would want to do that.
I don't think I would do it for the Atmos speakers.
Yeah, it'd be tricky because you'd have to, I mean, you'd have to like
I don't.
temporarily rewire them.
I don't.
just to
I
make
just
it
don't.
work.
I don't know that I would do it for the Atmos speakers at all. I just they're
Yeah,
not going to be sent any bass, and there shouldn't be any bass
that's
mixed
right.
into their channels anyways. So I
Well,
would do it in the front, left, and right for sure. Center channel
yeah.
perhaps. The surrounds, I would probably do one or two and go, they sounded okay. I just assume they're all okay.
Hmm. But I mean, I honestly think that there's a significant amount of bass that is in this particular demo being mixed into at least the front, left, and right speakers,
For sure.
and perhaps other speakers too. And that is no longer being sent to your subwoofer, and it is not being produced by your speakers that naturally roll off on their own anyway. So there is, in fact, bass missing from what's in the recorded signal versus what you're actually hearing. Now you're saying, hey, it sounded better without that extra bass, so I'd actually prefer that experience. But that becomes more of a refining your setup
Well,
situation
it's
than
not
it
only that
does
too, but he's
this is
playing a
just
track
wrong.
called Powerful Bass.
That's
It's
right.
made to, it's almost certainly made to rattle things in the room. The fact that it's not rattling things in the room means that there's something wrong.
It
I
could
would
be.
think.
It could
They
be.
were go that's what they were going for. They were
Yeah.
going for things to be rattling, really, really powerful. Now, the question, the question I ask is, when you're watching movies, is your bass overwhelming and
Mm.
rattling things in the room on a regular basis? If you have not experienced that in anything other than this track, my suggestion to you is to not play this track anymore and go on with your life. Because honestly, I think it's kind of like the doctor says when you go to the doctor and you say, "Hey, it hurts when I do this," and the doctor says, "Don't do that anymore," and you're fixed. Clearly the problem, whatever the problem is with this one track, is not solved. But more than likely, the problem with this one track is the fact that you have a 0.1 instead of a 0.2.
Could be.
You're having uneven bass and things
Yeah.
are rattling in your room. And even if it sounds overwhelming, I imagine it's supposed to sound overwhelming, but the rattling and all that stuff is because you're not getting that even bass. And like we say, when you get the two subwoofers in there, you start hearing bass that sounds quieter to you.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds objectively quieter or subjectively quieter to you until it needs to be there. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, there it is. And then it's
Yeah.
gone again. And that's because you get a more even bass response.
Yeah.
So John, maybe get back to us and let us know whether or not other things have been bothering you with your bass. And
Mm-hmm.
it could be very well be that, well, first of all, I'm not saying you have to go out and buy another subwoofer, though you really kind of do. But you might want to just rethink, do what Rob says, at least with the front three speakers,
Right.
and
Yeah.
just start, examining how well Dirac hooked you up this very first time with the Room EQ Wizard, and consider redoing your measurements. It's not that big of a deal to redo them if you've done them once. You know how much time it takes.
Yeah,
And
if all you do is a bass sweep individually through your front, left, and right, that's not like asking too much, of someone's time, and it's well worth it because this is why it's so important to do the things with a completely objective signal like a bass sweep, where everything
yeah,
everything is even. So if it doesn't sound even, something's gonna miss because that's the problem with trying to tune a system based off of music and movies, which is often recommended on, you see that all the time, websites and forums and stuff like, oh, listen to your favorite stuff and tune. It's like, nah, that you don't know whether what you're hearing is accurate. And
well, not
you
only
have to
that,
do it one at a time because if you have two speakers playing, both of them playing bass, now that bass is interacting with the room and you don't know whether the transition from one speaker to the sub is actually even, and it should be. So it's, you have to drill down.
all right, Monty is seriously considering going with the BenQ HT1075 or maybe the new 3050 or whatever it's
That's
called.
right. Yep.
So, projector and a silver ticket screen from Amazon, as we recommended previously. Now, based on how large, based on his room, because he said there's a diagram which I apparently did not open.
You're gonna have to zoom in on that sucker. It's a neat diagram he sent because he sent like the floor plan and then
I think
put
I've
the
seen this.
side
Yeah.
walls to like the left and the right and the front and back walls above
Oh yeah, I've
and
seen
below.
this picture.
Yeah, so it's like a exploded view of the room. It's handy.
Yeah, like he had laid the walls down.
Yeah,
Which is kind of
which
neat.
is helpful because it is an oddly shaped room. The ceiling is
Right.
vaulted, but the vault of the ceiling is not in the middle of the room. It is offset to the side. He has a ceiling fan that is offset in every direction. It's not centered in the room at all. So it is helpful to be able to see what's
Where is he
going
putting
on
the
in here.
screen? Which wall is he putting the screen on?
Right. Okay. So if
The small
looking at
wall?
the diagram, no, he's going to put it on one of the long walls, the one that's on the left.
Oh, okay. So
When we're looking at the
the
diagram.
room will slant to the left of his home theater, basically.
Yeah.
So
The
when he puts his seat in there, the ceiling will slant down to the left.
down to the
Yeah,
left. That's
yeah.
correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he can have
The
some.
peak of the ceiling will be running from the front wall to the back wall over to his right, and that's where the fan is hanging down too.
Oh, so the
Yeah.
fan's right over
And
his
so
head then.
behind him is his kitchen. Now it is not completely open to the kitchen, but there is like a window cutout. So it's one of those things where, you can see from the kitchen into the living room, but it's not a complete opening. So
Yeah.
that's the situation there.
All right. So he needs to know how he should how large a screen he needs and how he should should the setup be laid out. The seats are 12 feet from the screen wall, and he likes to sit in the back third of the movie theater. So he likes
Okay.
kind of smaller,
Yeah.
depending on what I mean, it
He's
could be
not one of these
IMAX, in which
not one
case.
of these front row
Yeah.
people.
So keep in mind the speaker distance from the wood burning stove. Right now, the closest speaker is about 3 feet away. And while it gets warm, there doesn't seem to be any damage. How close would we risk it? I don't like putting speakers next to things on
Next to
fire.
stoves.
Yeah, just as a general principle, I tend
I
to disagree with
know.
that as a good idea. Um, yeah, so I guess I'm thinking he's probably going to want something more, closer to like a mid 30s field of view, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah, because I mean, he's talking about going with a 16:9 screen. He's not talking about having a CinemaScope aspect ratio or a dual screen setup or something like that. At that point, I'm like somewhere in the like 36 to 40 degree field of view, I feel is really nice because it's a really nice compromise between watching HD TV in a size that isn't too large, because that should be between like 30 and 36 degree field of view, and then having movies where it doesn't look too small, because I can watch a cinemascope movie maybe up to a 45 degree field of view. Larger than that I personally find too
Mhm.
large, too close. And I like to sit in the back third of a theater, so I feel as though we're kind of akin there. So I feel like somewhere in the 36 to 40 degree field of view is a really nice balancing act.
I like my
And
home cinema to have a bigger screen than what I like at the theater, to be honest with you.
okay,
I
yeah,
sit like I try to sit right dead on, like I'm looking at the theater. If I had a tape measure that was long enough,
yeah,
I would like whip it out and I'd be dead on the back, a third of the way in from the wall. But that for
right.
me, that's more about audio than it is about video.
Hmm.
I'm more worried about getting the best audio that I can, because you sit in weird places, it can be weird.
Yeah. So I
But
mean, if you go with that range, then from 12 feet away, between a 106 and a 120-inch screen, and Silver Ticket offers 106, 110, and 120-inch screens as standard sizes that you can just order directly off Amazon with no configuration needed. You just pick the size you want. So I'm thinking between a 106 and a 120-inch diagonal screen would be really nice from that distance.
yeah.
And I think it's pretty reasonable to go with that.
So those projectors for a 106-inch screen, you'd have to be you could have to be anywhere between like 9 and 11.5 feet away.
Yeah, the
So
lens. Remember
the
the
lens,
lens of the
the
screen,
end right where the
of the
lens
projector.
starts. Yeah, not the whole projector, just the lens. And for a 120-inch screen, you're going to be between 10 and 13 feet away. So that 12 foot puts it
Yeah,
right above your head. Figure out how you're going to hang your projector too, because this is going to make a big difference. If you're planning on putting it on the back wall or something, but it sounds like he's going to have to hang it from the ceiling. And there's that ceiling fan that he has
that's
to
right.
contend with as well.
But thankfully, that ceiling fan is pushed over to the right. So there are things to consider, because he was saying what should the setup be here, and one option is a coffee table mount. But if he does a coffee table mount, we have to remember the projector itself is about 11 inches deep, so pretty much a foot deep. The closest it can be, like if he goes with the 106-inch screen size, he can put the lens 8 feet 10 inches away, so like is it close to 9 feet, but 2 inches, and then add another 11 inches to that, and then you have to sit behind it. Right now, that could be squishy, but just doable.
Yeah,
Whereas
but
if
the
he goes,
projectors get hot and they blow air and stuff. I don't like it.
You don't like a coffee table mount? Because I'm
I
thinking a
mean, I
coffee
like the
table.
idea.
I'm
I
thinking a
like the
coffee table
idea,
mount
but
is more reasonable here, actually. Yeah.
then dropping it from the ceiling, it probably is.
Yeah, because he's got this high vaulted ceiling. I mean, the thing is, he's got one pole hanging down already, which is his fan.
Right.
So if you have another pole hanging down beside it, which is the projector, it's not going to look wildly out of place. You now have two things hanging down from your ceiling.
Maybe you can hang the projector right above the fans on the fan spinning. I
So
don't know.
So, I mean, with these HT1075 or the HT3050, both of them have the exact same setup options. So they both have a 1.3 times zoom lens. They both have this same throw distance. They both have the same lens offset. Now, this is a projector where you must, if it's a coffee table mount, the entire image will be slightly above the center line of the projector's lens. So this is not a projector where you are putting it within the boundaries of the screen. If you hang it from the ceiling, the entire image will be slightly below the center line of the projector lens. So it is a 105% offset. So you take the entire height of the screen plus 5%, and that's how much it is below the center line of the projector's lens. So it's a little bit off, and then you can add another 10% to that with that vertical lens shift that it has. But these projectors must be perfectly centered left to right. They don't have horizontal lens adjustment. Right. So this is tricky. I mean, you're going to have to plan this out carefully, and thankfully he's drawn his diagram to scale. He can plan this out very carefully, but you are working within limitations here. The thing is, it can be done. Whether you want to do it as a ceiling mount overhead, you're going to have an extension pole because you don't have a tremendous amount of vertical range to work with here. You're going to have an extension pole, but you could do it that way, or you could do it on a coffee table mount. So like what I worked out, if he goes with the 106-inch screen size, either of those are options. It should give you just enough room in front of you that you could put it on a coffee table, sit beside it, behind it. If you did that, you'd want the center line of the projector lens 23 inches off the floor to get like the perfect THX height of the screen. Or if you're hanging it down, 2 feet. Or hanging it down from the ceiling, you want it 81 inches from the floor if you're hanging it down. So that's coming down a ways from his like 10-foot ceiling up there. But those are all the numbers. It can be done.
I mean, how attached are you to that ceiling fan? Maybe we can just get rid of that thing.
It should be okay where it is. It shouldn't be. It should be able to be beside it.
Yeah,
it'll be okay.
That's the theory.
Yep.
All right, let's know what you do. Nathan currently has a 7.2 speaker setup, and he'd like to expand to 7.2.2 Atmos using top middle speakers. Okay. He enjoys using the manual parametric EQ options on his current Yamaha AV receiver, but he's heard Rob mention that the current Yamaha models do not allow you to set any of the overhead speakers as top middles. Should he give up his manual parametric EQ in favor of Audyssey on a Denon? Or Marantz that he can identify the speakers as top middles? Is he missing an option that he hasn't considered?
So,
I don't know.
The situation with the Yamahas, and this would be the 2050 or the 3050.
Is that the one he's got? Oh, he's looking at it. No, he wants to buy another. To buy another. Okay.
Yeah. Because in the Yamaha lineup, the 2050 and the 3050 are the only two models that can go up to 7.2.2. The 2050 stops at 7.2.2. The 3050 could go to 7.2.4 if you add 2 more amps.
You can't do top middles? That doesn't make any sense.
There is no option to identify the overhead speakers as top middle or as surround Dolby if you're doing the upward firing ones. They have front and rear only. So you can do front height and top front. Or top rear or rear height, but you can't identify anything as top middle. However, there's kind of a workaround, because if you stop at 7.2.2, saying I only have 2 overhead speakers, right in those Yamaha manuals, the diagram shows the speakers installed where the top middle speakers would go. In the setup menu, they'll be identified as top front, but the the renderer is actually assuming that the 2 speakers, since you only have 2 overhead speakers, not 4, it assumes that you put them directly overhead the way Dolby recommends that you do if you are using only 2.
But they call them front heights?
They call them top fronts.
Top
That's
fronts.
that's that's the label that will show up. So you'll be using the front presence speaker outputs. That's what they'll on the back. It'll be the front presence speaker outputs, and in the menus, they'll be identified as top fronts. But the renderer is actually assuming they're directly overhead, which is where the top middles would be. So if you know that you're stopping at 7.2.2 and you're not going to 7.2.4, you essentially have top middle speakers in those Yamahas. In fact, that's now the only thing you have. Again, it's like if you actually put them further forward or further back, the Yamaha is assuming they're directly overhead. That's just where it thinks they are, no matter what you call them. But that kind of works out in Nathan's case. So he can keep
Weird.
his manual parametric EQ, which is still in those Yamahas. He can have top middle speakers. They'll just be labeled as top fronts, but the renderer thinks they're top middles, so you're okay. Yeah, so getting into the nitty gritty there, but it'll work for Nathan.
That's really weird. Why Yamaha?
I know. Well, then you get the Denon or the Marantz, and they won't let you use the Dolby Surround Up mixer on DTS bit streams. So, pick your poison.
Yeah. So McMansion Chris, he has an update on mounting his surround speakers where he was there was a sliding glass door. He used what's called a Stolman closet fixture, which looks like a pole.
I believe I think if you put it in a closet, it's the horizontal pole that you would hang things on. I think that's what it is.
He went up, down.
Vertical, yeah. Yeah, he put it in
vertical
vertically.
one.
Yeah.
And then he mounted it to that pole.
Yeah.
I don't understand how this works anyways. But anyways,
I'm sure there are those professional speaker like tripods.
Yes.
Where they have the speaker mounts go directly onto a round pole. So this particular closet fixture is the correct diameter that you can use a professional speaker mount.
I understand. I understand how it works. What I don't understand is how his wife approved of this, because it's like right next to a sliding glass door. So is it? It must be like. I mean, where is it that? It's just very bizarre. I don't understand why he just hung it from the ceiling.
Previously, he had his surround speakers farther back. They were well behind his seats, and this whole time he's been like, I want to get them beside my seats where they're supposed to be in that 90 to 110 degree range. Before they were farther back than that. So this was his solution, because he has a wall on the left side, but on the right side
he has that one wall mounted, and this one is on this pole. That's right.
Well, it looks like it's perfectly centered in the sliding glass door, so maybe that's how it worked out.
That's the only way I can think of it. Is because that when I look at it, I'm seeing the same thing you think. It's like it's right smack dab in the middle. So I'm thinking it's right where the
joint
where the
of
two
the
doors,
two sides of the door
meet right there is what I'm thinking. Or maybe it should maybe a little bit behind that, because you have to grab the door. Anyways, so apparently she's happy with that. That's fine. It looks. I'm hoping the door opens on the right side, so you're not banging your head on the speaker as you're walking in.
Well, I mean, the pole itself almost looks like it fits right in.
Yes, because it's a white pole, and there's white drapes right there.
That's
so
right.
It's sort of
and a white soffit above it. So the pole does not look the least bit out of place. That's very cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Where was I?
More than that, he's happy with the results. So that's the main.
And his wife is happy.
That's right.
You can't help but think about what's next, because he's got a McMansion and more money he knows what to do with. Except he didn't want to do the sub tsunami, which I think he should have done. He's now looking forward to adding immersive audio in his current 7.3 setup. He has two subwoofers and something he's using as a mid-bass module.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly. However, all the confusion makes it hard to know what kind of system will support all the immersive technologies and eventually survive the early shakeout. He's interested in Atmos, DTS-X, and even Oro 3D.
Aha!
You may very well be the only person that's interested in Oro 3D, but it's you and that other dude. You can talk to each other when you go to the Oro 3D conference.
Well, we know what brands you'll be going to. We know what brands you'll be going to for your AV receiver or pre-pro choice.
That's right. So should he keep his rear surrounds? Does he need to add 2, 4, or 6 overhead need to add 2, 4, or 6 overhead speakers? If so, how should they be positioned to best accommodate the multiple formats? Are front height something to consider? All of that. He doesn't want a gazillion speakers, but he does want to improve things over his current setup. Also need changes, or at least a year away, would he like to have a goal in mind?
Alrighty.
Well, we've talked about this before, and front height speakers, or the top front speakers, kind of are the speakers that you can put up there that will kind of accommodate all the formats right
Mm-hmm.
now, including Oro 3D. Oro 3D, if you think of wherever your speakers are right now, put another speaker above them about 3D all the way around you. As if your speakers are all at ear level, which his aren't. But if they were all at ear level, so your rear, your sides are already like whatever the height channel is for Aura 3D, and Aura 3D just has one speaker over the top. God, Atmos and the DTS-X all have speakers in line with your your mains front and left speaker all the way across the top, kind of flanking your which should be the middle of your couch.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the top fronts, which would be in front of your couch, the top middles, which would be on top of your couch, the top rears would be behind your couch. Most people are saying that if you have your 7-point setup, your rear will be so close together because everybody elevates their rear surrounds because they do until Dolby says, "Oh no, we never said that. It's supposed to be ear height." No, we never said that. You guys are a bunch of liars. We're changing our website. Shut up. But the rear heights, the top rears and the rear speakers are close enough together that the difference is not all that big. But if you take and you put top fronts, that makes a bigger difference. And then top middles, I guess, would be the two pairs of speakers I would set up if I were in if that's what I was aiming for. I would start with top fronts and then
Maybe front heights.
Front heights is limit.
Yeah.
I would, in that area, maybe start there and then go to top middles. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you there is actually only one setup, unless you're talking about the $20,000 to $50,000 type processors in getting up into the.
He's a McMansion guy. He might have
getting up into the Trinovs and the Steinway Lingdorfs and those guys. If we're talking about somewhat more affordable options from Denon or Marantz, because those are the only brands supporting Oro 3D in the mass consumer world, there is only one setup that's compatible with all of the immersive audio formats, and that's traditional 7.1 or 0.2, 0.3, whatever you have as far as subwoofers go, but the traditional 7-speaker setup with front heights and rear heights. If you label your 0.4 at the end of there, your overhead speakers, if you label them as front heights and rear heights, that setup is compatible with Atmos, DTS-X, and Oro 3D. So all of them can use that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you actually have to physically place the speakers where front height and rear height speakers go. Because in the Atmos and the DTS-X worlds, the speakers that are labeled as top fronts overlap all the positions where front heights could go and then add even a little bit more coming closer to you on the ceiling. Same with the rear heights. They overlap, the top rear speakers overlap where the rear height speakers would go. So what I would say is, first of all, keep your surround back speakers, because regular 7.1 content, you can still play it back. Yay. I would actually pretty much just go with Dolby's recommended speaker positions, which are top fronts and top rears. I would put 4 speakers in your ceiling. I would position them in the ceiling, maybe a little closer to the front of your room and closer to the back of your room. But I would have them as in-ceiling speakers, just like Atmos would recommend. But I could label them front height and rear height. That's not going to tremendously screw up the renderer because those positions overlap. And it will be compatible with everything, including Oro 3D. So to me, that's sort of the best of all worlds solution. You position them exactly like Dolby would have you, top fronts and top rears, but you just call them front heights and rear heights. And everything works.
And I would not do that.
Okay, that's fair.
Because I think the rear heights, you're wasting your time. I think I would have the front heights, do exactly what he said. You can label them whatever you need to label them.
Mm-hmm.
Your Dolby and DTS will all use them just fine, or 3D can use them fine, whatever. But I would go with top middles because I think they're going to be make more of a difference, and then not worry about those for the half dozen, if that, or 3D movies that come out that you give a crap about.
Yeah, because Oro would, in their ideal world, they would have what they call surround height, which doesn't exist in the Atmos or the DTSX setups. But they would have surround height speakers. So yeah, if you go with front heights and top middles, then when you play Oro 3D, the front height speakers will still be active. The top middles will not. They will not be active anymore, because Oro 3D cannot use those positions if you call them that.
Which
And
stinks
if
because
you
they
call them, yeah, if you call them surround height, then Atmos and DTSX cannot make use of those because they don't have anything called surround height. So that's why there's this front height and rear height, which is at least in name only compatible with all three. Then you can sort of decide where you want to place them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, top middle should be able to be used by Aura 3D as the voice of God
You would
speakers.
think.
They should be able to do that. It's ridiculous that they just don't put that mono into those two speakers.
I know.
There's just no reason not to do it. So that alone makes me not like Aura 3D.
But as far as I know, in the Oro 3D setup, if you say you have front heights, and that seems to be the easy one because they all work with that. If you say you have front heights, but you do not say that you have either surround heights or rear heights, they won't let you say that you have a top surround, the AKA voice of God speaker. You must have the 4 height speakers before you can have the voice of God speaker. Well. So that's another one. Also, once you set up the voice of God speaker, at least in the Denon and Marantz models, that actually comes out of the Subwoofer 2 pre-out, meaning you are down to a single subwoofer 1 output, which is fine because we recommend running your subs in mono anyway. It doesn't hurt that, but it means you cannot use sub EQHT if you were planning on using that because the subwoofer 2 output is now commandeered by the top surround, aka voice of God speaker for Oro 3D. So the actual really good solution here is to forget all about Oro 3D. Because that's the problem. That's the only problem.
The big problem here is that you mentioned Aura 3D. It's screwing.
That's right.
Because you're never gonna buy an Aura 3D movie. You're not gonna. And if you do, it's gonna have something else on it as well. And it's like buying 3D glasses for the one movie that you want to watch. It's ridiculous.
But there's the nitty gritty. If you want to drill it all down, we've done it for you.
All right. Nicholas has a pair of Sierra 2s as his front mains. He likes the idea of having all 5 main and surround speakers be Sierra 2s and going with less expensive speakers for surround backs and overhead speakers in his eventual immersive audio setup.
All right.
He's heard us say that the surround should be elevated even in an Atmos setup, despite what Dolby says, because they're liars. They are. But so being that the Sierra 2s have great horizontal dispersion, but less great vertical dispersion, won't having the surrounds elevated mess up the perfect tonal match of all 5 speakers. Rob would know about this. Don't you have all them speakers?
I do indeed. And yeah, I mean, if you're playing test tones or sweeps directly through it, and you know,
do you
sweeps that are going up high, I aim them. I tilt them down a little bit. That's what I do. So I mean, there's 2 options, right? You can either still have them elevated but tilt them down just a little bit so that at least your primary seat is falling within the vertical window of that Sierra 2, and it does have a narrow vertical dispersion. There's no question about that. The other thing you could do is lay the thing on its side, so that
is true.
As long as you're within, now the vertical window becomes your horizontal window. So if you have more than 1 row of seats, that's not a good solution for the Sierra 2. But if you only have 1 row of seats and your surround speakers are directly beside you and you lay it down on its side, now you're within the new horizontal dispersion, which is narrow. It used to be the vertical, but now what used to be the horizontal dispersion, which is very wide, is now your vertical dispersion and will easily cover all of your seats. So 2 solutions.
There you go.
Just tilt them.
So anyways, he says, should you save some money and use the Ascend CBM 170s for all the surrounds instead? Just have the front 3 be the Sierra 2s.
Right. Yeah. I mean, totally depends on how picky you are about having a perfect timbre match. You know, I mean, I will always say
I hate to break it to you, dude. I know we talk about this and this timbre matching and stuff like that, but I feel like people think that if they get 5 identical speakers and they put them around the room pointed right at their heads, that there's going to be one clean 100%, no changes, and it's just not the case.
Because
it's
positioning.
Not the case.
That's right.
Positioning, your room, what's between you and the speaker, all these things make a difference. So if you think you're going to buy 5 identical speakers and it's going to be like you're not going to be able to tell where one speaker starts and the other speaker ends, it's just not the case. There's always there's something different as the speaker goes, as the sound goes from one to the other. Will it be really, really close? Yes. And
Right.
will you be able to tell that difference when it's not a test tone or, something else like that? Probably no. But timbre matching is one of those things, like for me, it's kind of like HDMI. If it's working well enough, you don't notice it. But when it doesn't work, it's like, okay, there's a
Right. Yeah.
problem here.
Yeah. Yeah.
What just happened to that sound? Like, it's massive. It's a massive difference.
Mm.
So while I do think it's a good idea to have speakers that are closely matched,
Mm-hmm.
and I do advocate that people, especially when they're looking at taking like their super inefficient speakers and trying to mix them with a clips, something, clips or something like that, and I say, I don't know about that. That's a little sketchy.
Yeah.
Really, as long as they're close, you're not going to notice it.
Yeah.
Though
Yeah.
Rob will tell you that psychosomatically, he is very sure that there's a difference that it would have a problem.
No,
It's what
I mean,
it is.
it's very dependent. I mean, one of the reasons that I can more easily pick up on a timbre mismatch between my fronts and surrounds is because my theater's so tiny right now, and I'm sitting so close to the speakers that it's like wearing headphones. And I'm like, I could pick out a timbre mismatch if I had 2 different ear cups on from 2 different headphones, and that's basically what's happening. So, it depends on your situation. It really, really does. But I mean, if you're super picky about it, if you start with identical speakers, it's giving yourself the best shot. At least you know what's coming out of the speaker is the same. And now any timbre differences are because of positioning in the room. At least you know that much. But if those positioning differences, as your weakest link in the system are so great that it doesn't really matter if all 5 speakers match, then you might as well save some money, right? Yeah, so it's very much a it depends situation. But I can tell you that, let's say you took the CBM 170s and you put them up front beside the Sierra 2s and you switched AB back and forth as your front speakers, you would be able to pick out a timbre difference between those two speakers. They do not sound identical to one another in timbre. That doesn't mean that the CBM 170s are by any stretch a bad sounding speaker. Far from it, but they do not perfectly match in timbre. So I can say that objectively, and then you'll have to decide based on your setup and how much you really care about that timbre match, whether you think the cost adjustment is worth it. But I can tell you in my setup, it works. How much it comes up in actual content, quite minimal.
Yeah.
Once in a while a sound pans around and I go, it's kind of nice that really timbre matches. And I'm a crazy person, so I like that.
That's right. Remember that.
Yeah.
Efren took advantage of a Black Friday deal on Amazon and picked up a PS4 to replace his now dead PS3 that had recently doubled as the Blu-ray player in his media room. He remembers that at launch, the PS4 was not as complete a Blu-ray player as the PS3 was. Has this been addressed in firmware updates, or are there still issues to be concerned about? Now, you have a PS3, 4, 3, both probably.
Yep.
And what say you?
It has been addressed as far as feature parity goes. It can now send bitstream lossless audio output from its HDMI connection. It can now play 3D Blu-rays, which it couldn't when it was brand new. That had to be done with a firmware update. So yeah, the PS4 functionally is fine now as a Blu-ray player. I haven't seen really thorough tests about whether its output, for calibration standards, because one of the nice things about the PS3 was it was like a benchmark player. It output really solid. It was like an Oppo, really, really perfect output levels. I don't know if the PS4 matches it in those terms. However, that's really not hugely important because it's not naked eye type stuff. It's, your $1,700 or $7,000 colorimeter sensor that can pick out the difference, not your eyeball type of stuff. So I wouldn't worry about that. Feature wise, it's now fine.
I'll be honest. I'm about to go back to the PS3 for playing Blu-rays over the Xbox One, just because I have to switch the audio on the Xbox One to 7.1 versus 5.1. It's a big pain in the butt. I keep forgetting to switch it back. Yeah, the only problem is you have to every once in a while you have to reconnect the Bluetooth to the remote. It seems to forget it after a while.
Weird.
Jonathan, First of all, thanks us for giving him what he expects from us. Genuine praise combined with withering scorn. I don't think it was withering scorn. All we said is we thought you were lazy and not checking your wires. And really, I think Austin said most of that, so you should definitely take it up with him.
Oh, there you go. Wow.
You're not showing up, Austin.
The guy
Under the bus, boy.
Himself.
All right. Anyways, Jonathan does have a few things to note. He did look for stray wires for over 30 minutes. And if he's a man like I am a man, then that was actually 3, and I'm just kind of rounding up to the nearest half hour. But anyways, he did look for stray wires for over 30 minutes and found absolutely nothing. He can guarantee that moving the AVR didn't surreptitiously move a strand. No, he can't. Well, he's just we're all just happy that it works.
Yes. We agree. I believe it probably was a ventilation problem.
I think it was too. Honestly, I do. I do
very,
think it
very
was.
Possible.
Yes, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was Austin that brought up that it wasn't.
But those will be the two things. You know, it's either the thing is choking for air and it's overheating, or there's a stray wire when you get these protection mode faults.
And we should all be thankful that we have all these protection mode faults because honestly, it wasn't that long ago that we didn't, and you just lost channels. It's like, oop, stray wire. Nope. You don't get to play out of that speaker ever again.
That's right.
So, yeah, this is much better. 2, he promises never to discuss Yamaha sound projectors again. Everybody's comments were fair and balanced. What? I think that he should defend the thing that he likes so much.
Yeah.
You know? Somebody's got to. Stupid screen keeps going off.
Oh dear. You see what James has wrought now.
James. Turn to this computer. All right, scrolling down to the thing. What else did he say? Some things with words. Here it is.
Yep, it was
to write the station about the surround buzz, but he's going to give it a try if the problem persists.
Yeah, as much it was only one affiliate station. Some of their content he was getting buzzing out of his surround channels.
Right.
So, yeah.
And as to the center speaker, we commented that it seemed like he had a whole bunch of mopads underneath there. He has. They come in pairs. I mean, he had 2 sets to use, and he's using all of them. If he had more, he would have used those 2 to get a little bit higher, I guess. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, you can always angle them.
He's strongly considering more treatment on the window side of the room, but is waiting to measure after the chairs arrive. Well, it's probably a good idea. Get everything in there, get settled, start listening to it, and then see what you think before you start buying a bunch of room treatments. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine with thick drapes over those windows, which is what he's planning anyway. Because the left side of his room is more uneven. There's a little teeny tiny, I don't know if you call it a hallway, but where the door is, it's not a flat wall. There's a little part of the room that juts out there to get to the doorway, and then the closet over on that side. So yeah, I think just some nice thick drapes. This is why you got to come watch the YouTube video, folks. If you come to Tom's YouTube channel and watch the video, you can watch him playing with his new laptop screen as it lights his face.
And James has already sent me an email apologizing for the fact that this thing must have gotten damaged, and he said it was working before he left. When it first got here, it worked for like a day, and then all of a sudden it turned itself off. Stop it! Do me a monitor! I hate you. All right. Going back to this computer.
It's a good thing you had that backup. That was clever.
I had all these tabs open on this one, and then I just closed them all because I thought, I won't need those anymore because I got it on this other computer. Now what happens? This. All right. So, and these are the tabs that are open for Michael here.
Yes.
So Michael has a pair of HSU HB1 Mark II bookshelf speakers. Okay, these are from HSU. They're horn-loaded. They're black boxes with big horns on them, and he's really happy with them. And he'd eventually like to upgrade them to quote something better end quote. He defines that as speakers that are both as linear and dynamic as possible. So he wants linear and dynamic.
Yeah,
which I think we want in all of our speakers, but whatever. So what are our top 2 speaker choices in the 500, 1,000, and 2,000 a pair ranges? And he specifically wants me to mention models, not just you.
Well, I can still start, unless you got your plan.
I have some plans. Let me open my tabs again. Dang it.
Well, while you do that, I'll start on my $500 pair of choices. For me, this is actually Kind of easy because I think the Ascend Acoustics CMT 340 SEs, those are the biggest models in the SE series. They are technically a large bookshelf speaker that has a tweeter flanked by two woofers. They do sell a pedestal stand, and if you put these speakers atop that pedestal stand, they look exactly like towers, but they are technically a large bookshelf speaker. Normally they sell for just over $500 a pair. Right now they're actually on sale for just under $500 a pair. And when you're talking about a linear speaker that is also dynamic and can play very loud, man, these are tough to beat, in my opinion. I really like the tweeter in these. So honestly, I start with those, and quite frankly, I'm not sure I would pick any of my more expensive choices over them, even though I think the rest of the choices I'm going to mention are still very good.
Which one are you talking about? I wasn't listening. Ascend
The
Acoustics?
Ascend Acoustics, yeah, the CMT 340s, the
Okay.
big ones. I
Yeah.
like those so much that until you get up to the $2,000 a pair range, those are kind of be my go to. However, they're not necessarily the prettiest speakers ever because they're plain black, flat black boxes. So that would be a reason to go for something else. And I'll bet Tom and I both have a same choice here.
We have a couple
I'm
of
guessing.
choices that are overlapping.
Yeah.
I need to hold on a second here.
I
Speaker.
do want to mention I made sure I only wanted to put in recommendations here because we're only picking two for each of these price points. Speakers I have heard in person and will personally vouch for because there are other speakers I have zero problem with. Like everything about them, all the reviews makes me think that they're going to be good speakers. However, if I have not personally used them, I'm not going to put them in a recommendation like this. Does not mean there isn't something potentially better or just as good as anything I'm going to mention. Totally doesn't mean that.
Right. You see, my problem is that since he wanted, since he was talking about his old speakers were bookshelf speakers,
Uh huh.
I thought I would stick with bookshelf speakers, and
Ah.
that means that I need to, uh,
Well, you don't have to. I mean, he was just saying, what would we recommend? Because he wants high dynamics and high output capability. And that's going to start leaning you towards towers.
It is, and that's part of it. And he kind of asked later, so
Yeah.
maybe we should stick with that. But I reviewed the Q, was it the Q500s? The Q, I think they were the Q500 from KEF, and they're a floor standing speaker for
Those are
550.
towers. Yeah.
Those are
Well,
towers
those
as
are
well.
550 each.
Yeah.
So
So
you're into the $1,000 a pair
I'm already in
range
the
there.
$1,000 range. Now, on the lower end, I thought he should be looking at Klipsch, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Uh, because if he likes high dynamic range and getting loud, and he likes the HSU speakers, I think
Mm-hmm.
he might. It would make sense for him to look at Klipsch. You can get towers for as low as looks like was it $300 a pop, and the bookshelf speakers are going to be cheaper than that. They have an Atmos speaker that's
Right.
$1,000. It's a tower with an Atmos thing on top. I mean, you can get a lot more expensive than that. The bookshelf speakers, we've got the RP 150Ms for
Mm-hmm.
419 a pair. And this is directly from Clips, so who knows what
Yeah.
you can get these
Yeah.
things online for cheaper. Now, have I heard them? No, but I've heard the reference series, so I feel kind of comfortable
Yeah.
recommending them. Uh, then
Yeah, and I've never known Klipsch to stray too far, other than those Icon series that they built for Best Buy. Like I said, they stick out like a sore thumb to me because they don't even sound like other Klipsch speakers. They're so
yeah,
bad. But other than that, I've never known Klipsch to be like way off the mark with their own speakers. So
yeah, and then the
yeah.
five like the lower end price point, like you already you're gonna mention for the $1,000, you're gonna mention the EMT Tech towers, but they make the bookshelves, and those bookshelves are really inexpensive as well. Do I have
Yeah,
that open?
yeah. They're
I don't.
aren't they
They're
under
like
300?
they're
I
under
think they're
$300 a
yeah.
pair. Now, there you're going for linearity. That's what you're getting there.
Yeah.
Super linear compared to most speakers in almost any price point, but definitely that price point. Now, whether would you get the extension? Maybe not, because they're so cheap, but or inexpensive, maybe is a better way to say that. But you are getting a super linear speaker. Is it going to be as dynamic as you're used to? I don't
Mm.
know. But don't confuse being able to get really loud with good dynamics. That's just getting really loud. Lots of things can get loud. Doesn't mean they're all that accurate when they're doing it. Now, the HSUs are reportedly very good speakers. Their first generation of those speakers I reviewed and thought they were garbage. So, but Rob keeps telling me they were good. So I'm taking Rob's
The Mark IIs,
word
yeah.
for it. The Mark IIs were good. So I am taking his word for it. The Klipsch, on the other hand, if you're looking for that dynamics, that's, I think that this, to me, the two bookshelf speakers, the Klipsch versus the EMP Tech bookshelf speakers, you're looking at one's linear, you're going for more linearity, and one you're going for more dynamic range.
Cool. So that's your two 500s. And so you already mentioned, like, I put the EMP Tech R55 Ti towers as basically an in-betweener because they're $700 a pair. So technically they're closer to $500 a pair than they are to $1,000 a pair, but obviously they're more expensive than $500 a pair. So I picked those as my tweeners because if you want linear and dynamics and can play crazy loud if you want them to, those EMP Tech towers definitely fit that bill, and you will not find better looking speakers for anywhere close to that price.
Right.
So we have to include those. And you already mentioned what was going to be my first choice for $1,000 a pair, which are the KEF Q500s. Those are the smallest towers that KEF offers in the Q series, and they are $1,100 a pair if you buy them directly from KEF, $550 each speaker. But yeah, that's to me, that's a pretty darn good $1,000 pair of speakers.
And I've heard those speakers. I've reviewed them. They're very nice. You have to cross those over, okay? Because that speaker will not stop trying to play, no matter how much it can't do it. So it will continue to try to play, and you'll see the woofers going in and out, even when they're not really doing anything but distorting. So you do have to cross that over, but you would do that anyway. So that's not something that we have to worry about on this podcast. And that was definitely on my list of things to recommend as well.
So we each have one more $1,000 per pair choice to mention in that case.
And I would probably, once again, like I said, I was going for the book more towards bookshelves. So I would recommend those speakers right back there.
The Hyperions?
The Hyperion Audio Veris Grand bookshelf speakers, $700 a pair.
Totally fair.
Those are, it's got a fantastic tweeter. It's linear. It's got good dynamic range. I don't know that. You see, whenever somebody's got a horn-loaded speaker, it's like trying to tell somebody who owns a Jeep to buy non-Jeeps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it's a different sound. It's a distinct sound.
Yeah, the horn-loaded ones. I mean, and people get on there like, well, if it's not, it sounds different. It sounds different. I'm like, yeah, it sounds different. That's not bad. It's just different.
Yeah.
And it's something you'll have to get kind of used to, but that's a fantastic speaker back there. $700 a pair and if you want to get if you're like, well, what about the Fortes? I haven't heard the Fortes, but I've heard those are good too. Those are
so I tried to sort of have one tower and one bookshelf, even if it's a big bookshelf, in each of these. So for my second $1,000 a pair pick, I went with the NHT Classic 3s. Those are the largest bookshelf that NHT makes. It's actually a 3-way speaker. It has a dedicated 2-inch mid-range driver in there. And having the 3 drivers allows it to absorb more power, play a little bit louder. It's a physically larger bookshelf speaker as well than any of the others. It's right now they're on sale, so they're a fair bit under $1,000 a pair right now, but the regular price is right about $900 a pair. So NHT, if you want linear speakers that are pretty much just tell it like it is, they're a good choice. And those Classic 3s being a larger one, they can knock out the sound pressure level there if you want them to. So.
Yeah.
On to $2,000 a pair. What you got?
Well, I actually kind of stopped at $1,000 because when you get up to the $2,000, there's, well, I'm trying to see these Veris Grands. Are there's $1,000 a pop or $1,000 a pair? It's got to be $1,000.
$1,000 each for the towers.
So the towers, that's a pretty easy choice too, I suppose. I feel like I'm kind of phoning it in, but I'm not because it's tough. It's like recommending SVS subwoofers. You're like, well, I would love to recommend something else, but everything else costs more with less performance. So these speakers will give you a ton of performance for that $2,000 price point. Now, I did a $1,500 to $2,000 shootout a while back.
Yep.
And those speakers, I mean, you can go and you can look, and it depends on what kind of room you have. Like the speakers from what's it, Sulk Audio, Sulk
right.
Sound.
Sulk Sound, yep.
the only problem I've ever encountered with those speakers is that while they sound really good, uh, they're not well protected as far as
Sure. Yeah.
keeping them from damaging themselves if you play them too loud. So what does that mean? That means don't put them in a ginormous room and try to play them at reference level. If you have a normal size room or a reasonable size room, and you're not planning on trying to, have birds explode as they fly by your window, they'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
And the Salk Song Towers I reviewed, I loved those speakers.
Hmm.
Really quite a nice speaker. Uh, I don't know if I love them as much as I love these, but I like those speakers quite a bit. And they, if I remember correctly, pretty handily won that speaker shootout. Dolly also makes a pretty decent speaker in that price point that you could find something at there. But the Veris Grand Towers are probably going to have to be my choice, not only because I have them and I have so much experience with them, but because it's hard to find something that at this price point that beats them.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm in a similar boat where, I mentioned at the beginning the Ascend Acoustic CMT 340s, which, like I said, honestly, all the other speakers I've mentioned since, I might still pick those. They're the least expensive, and I might still pick them because their sound quality is really nice. But once you get to this $2,000 a pair, you can get Ascend Acoustics Sierra Towers. They normally go for $2,000 a pair. Now, it's kind of hard for me to say, well, you ought to bump that up to $2,700 a pair so you can get the RAL ribbons. That's a significant increase in the price. But I can promise you that doing that upgrade is a audible, in my opinion, worthwhile upgrade that puts those particular speakers into a performance category where throw what you want at them, other than speakers that can just play crazy loud. Just in terms of just delineation and the cleanliness of the audio, the transient response of the audio, I'd put them up against almost anything. So, the Sierra Tower is definitely an upgrade there. For a second pick, though, because I wanted to, again, have a bookshelf speaker pick, $2,000 a pair, I really like the Revel Performa 3, and it would be their M106s. That's the larger of the two models that they have in the bookshelf range. They do go for $2,000 a pair. And I really like when you talk about linear response, those Performa 3s are a very nice linear, very even dispersion speaker, which I really appreciate. So those are my two choices there.
There's a couple of KEF speakers you could be looking at too. Their
For sure,
reference,
yeah.
their
And
reference series would be.
and the
You can find tons of stuff in there.
Yeah, the SVS Ultra Towers, because I haven't heard the
Mm.
primes, right? People might be like, for $1,000 a pair, why aren't you mentioning the SVS primes? I haven't heard them, so that's why I wanted to give that disclaimer at the beginning. But the SVS Ultra Towers, I mean, they play in this too. They're $2,000 a pair. So
Yeah, we need to get SVS to send us some review samples just for us to listen to them and send them right back. Like I'm not interested in
yeah.
keeping them or anything. It's
Well,
like I got
hey,
enough speakers.
we can do it ourselves. A 45-day return window.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
I know.
Just have them send them to us. We'll listen to them and send them back. That sort of thing, and so that we can speak from a knowledgeable standpoint.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Because
that's
again,
what
I
it comes
mean,
down to.
yeah, there's nothing about those prime towers or any of the prime speakers that's making me say there's any reason to stay away from them.
No.
And people who are saying I got them and I love them, I'm like, I believe you. I totally believe you. But I haven't heard them in person yet, so that's all. Yeah.
All right, I gotta go back to my other computer now.
Ah,
I know.
we
sad
were so
face.
excited about this new laptop.
I am excited about this new thing still. Wait a second. That's not the right. All right. He's heard this is the same person, so we're back up. Michael.
Yes.
He's heard that Rob mentioned in passing that towers may be better for pressurizing large areas. Can we expand on that? He has a fairly large space, and sometimes it seems the speakers may be struggling a bit around the 100 hertz mark, while his subs do a better job representing that. Could larger towers help with a larger space or a larger, better bookshelf?
Yep.
Both
Yep,
of those
yep,
are the case. Yeah, a larger, better
Absolutely.
bookshelf will do the job, as will a tower speaker. Which one will do it better? It
Yeah.
depends on which speaker you buy.
Yeah, it depends on the exact model. Yeah, for sure.
I would like to say that a larger, better bookshelf will do better than a tower speaker if you're planning on crossing it over at 80 hertz anyways. But that's not always the case. It depends on the model.
Yeah.
So as long as we don't know what model that you're buying, any of these products that we mentioned up here, I can't think of anything that's going to have a problem in a largish room. Perhaps maybe the EMP Tech bookshelf speakers aren't
The
the best
bookshelves,
for
yeah.
those.
The
And,
towers will. They'll
or the
kill
oh
them.
yeah, the towers would be fine. Or
Yeah, they'll crush them.
the Veris Forte
Hmm.
bookshelf speakers might also have more of a
Yeah,
problem.
they're not huge output
No,
type
they're not.
guys. The Fortes, yeah.
But these guys behind me are a hefty speaker. I wouldn't
Hmm.
think that they would have much problem. The Veris Grand bookshelves and just about everything else we mentioned should be fine
Yeah.
as well.
So I mean, expanding on the question that he asked with the pressurizing larger areas, we have to remember that 80 hertz itself. So at 80 hertz, both your speakers and your subwoofer, they're both playing. And both of them are supposed to be 3 decibels quieter than the rest of the range that they're playing at that 80 hertz, where they both meet up. 80 hertz is bass, unequivocally. I mean, anything below 200 hertz is bass. So there's also a crossover happening, right? So in this, we're thinking of like a 24 decibel per octave crossover. So down at 40 hertz, your speakers are still playing. They're just 24 decibels quieter. They should have no problem putting that out there, but they're still making sound down at 40 hertz even. But because they're only 3 decibels quieter at 80 hertz, and 80 hertz is definitely bass, and it is definitely being impacted by the size of the room down at that frequency. You do need to pressurize the room, and the speaker is just as responsible for pressurizing the room as the subwoofer is down at that 80 hertz point. So if you have a speaker that naturally itself is starting to roll off at 80 or a little bit above 80, it means that you put it into a large room, and even with the subwoofer augmenting it, in that range from 160 hertz all the way below that, the speaker is still largely responsible for pressurizing the space. So in a small room, no problem. A little bookshelf speaker, it can only play down to 80 hertz anyway. It's fine playing that 160 hertz and pressurizing a very small room. But in a larger space, you need the speaker itself to just have the raw output capability to do that. So, like in general, like let's take the EMP Techs, for example. You take the EMP Tech bookshelf speakers, and versus those EMP Tech tower speakers, they're within the same line. They use similar drivers, similar materials, and that. But there's no question those towers can just raw play much louder and output that 80 hertz sound much louder than the bookshelf comparator. Same with pretty much in general, almost any speaker manufacturer. That's the case. The tower version usually has more drivers and a larger cabinet, and that lets it play louder from 160 hertz down. So that's really all it's about. It's that the speaker is still responsible for pressurizing the room from 160 hertz on down. It comes into play there.
I had the monitor working for a second. Now it's not. Ken upgraded his Marantz SR5005 to a Marantz AV8802A.
Ooh.
Currently, he has a 5.0 setup. Still no subs. When he told his wife we suggested that we put one in the kitchen and one sub in the bay window, she just laughed at him. However, she never technically said no. He remains optimistic about the possibility. That is a glass is half full, man. If
You could really do a do-it-yourself and just turn that bay window into your own do-it-yourself subwoofer enclosure. You just put a baffle over the whole
putting
thing.
an infinite baffle in there and just knocking out the window.
Opening the window behind
it. Just open the window and let your neighbors enjoy the bass. You will be the hit of the neighborhood, which means they will try to hit you with their car. Now, all right. Anyway, ceiling speakers aren't really an option, but he's considering front heights. According to the Marantz manual, Atmos will take advantage of these. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
All of the up mixers will take advantage of front heights. Even Oro 3D if you want to pay $200
for all of your singing, dancing, Indian movie.
Yeah. Yeah, like we just said previously, because the 8802 can definitely go to 7.2.4. So if ceiling speakers are not an option, you can do front heights and rear heights. You can do that, have 7.1.4, and that'll be a compatible speaker position and setup format for all the immersive audios. So, yeah, there's your option right there.
Yeah. When he ran Audyssey, it told him that his front left speaker was wired out of phase, but when he checked the wires, it was correct, and it sounds fine when listening. Should he just ignore the Audyssey message, or is it an indication of a larger problem of some kind? His seats are pretty close to the back wall, so could a slap echo be the cause? Yes.
Now, he did mention he tried our little trick. He put a pillow in the spot where his head would
And
be,
it still said
behind his
it
head,
was wired out of the
and
phase.
it still did that.
So did you
Um,
switch the wires, dude?
doesn't
Because
sound like it.
it's not impossible, and this has happened in the review samples that we've gotten at Audioholics before, where the internal crossover was wired out of phase. That's not a joke. That really happened, and
Yeah.
we figured it out, and then had to switch our wires. So, the way to really know, is to play something in stereo through those two speakers and those two speakers alone. It's this front left or something like that, right?
Yeah. Front
So
left speaker. Yeah.
you will absolutely know if your speakers are out of phase because
Right.
it will sound very bizarre, like it's all coming from one side of the room. It'll
Well,
sound really
I mean,
weird.
if it's out of phase, it'll actually sound really diffuse, right? Like
Well, yeah,
what
but
should be a locked center
right.
image will not be a locked center image. You won't have a phantom center if one
No.
speaker is wired out of phase and the other is not.
The times the way I describe it to people, whenever I've heard something when one speaker is wired out of phase, it kind of sounds like it's coming from someplace it's not supposed to.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the way I kind of
Ghostly.
describe it. Yeah. So switch it and then play something in stereo. Like, don't rerun Odyssey or anything. Just switch it.
Right.
Play something in stereo without your subwoofers or anything else on, if you can do that, and just listen. And if there's a center image and then you switch it back and it sounds weird, well, you'll know. So
Yeah. Now, as Chris Kyriakakis from Audyssey pointed out, that message is a warning.
yeah,
It is a warning of what Audyssey detected. It is not a pound your fist on the table, we are right that one of your speakers is wired out of phase. Because if you have dipole surround speakers, that warning is always going to come up. It is
yeah,
always going to tell you that your surround speaker is out of phase if you have a dipole, because by its very nature, it is out of phase. It's supposed to be. So it doesn't mean that you 100% have to rewire. Like, if you do this test with your own ears and you get a rock solid center image, then that's the end of it. Ignore the warning. But do the test, because Audyssey's saying, we detected something a little bit hinky here. So that's all
yeah.
it is. Yeah, it's a
That's all
warning
it is.
message. You can ignore it if your ears tell you otherwise.
All right. Michael is getting into Android TV and has ordered a Matricom G Box Q.
I do not know it.
What the heck is that?
Yeah, it's
Matricom?
one of the many Android TV boxes that is out there.
Never heard of it. And it has Kodi XBMC. Can we talk a little about Kodi? What exactly is it, and then what can you do with it? He's found YouTube videos with people listing URLs for plugins that let you stream or torrent all kinds of content for free. Are these legal? No.
Those
They're not.
things are not. Yeah.
But he gets himself in legal trouble just by using Kodi. Well, if you use it in that way, technically you could, but I doubt that you would. They're not really cracking down on people that are illegally torrenting things these days. Not yet. They have
Not too much. Yeah.
They have for on occasion, but usually it's some grandma someplace. So, it ends up being a debacle for them. So they just kind of backed up. But using Kodi it's like saying, hey, I bought a sports car. Am I going to start getting speeding tickets? Well, are you going to speed? Well, no. Then no. So are you going to stream things that are illegal? No. Well, then you have no problems getting in trouble. Just using Kodi will not in any way open you up to legal battles.
Yeah, I mean, to talk about what exactly it is, Kodi itself is software. It runs on basically every operating system that's out there. There's a version of Kodi for Android, for Mac, for Windows, for Linux. Everything. There's its own standalone little one, which is its own little Linux distro that can be its own operating system. Kodi Ubuntu, because it's based off of Ubuntu, but it's just Kodi. So
Oh, Ubuntu. I was trying to figure out what the heck you were talking about there for a second.
so
I thought you said Boom Tube. I've been reading a lot of
Ubuntu.
X-Men comics lately. I went to the library with my kids and I got Days of Future Past or whatever, like that,
Yeah.
the big book, and I was reading through all that stuff, trying to figure out how badly the movies messed it up. But the movie messed it up. And you said Ubuntu. I was like, Boom Tube? What? Dark Side? Dark Side's coming? My geek is like just flowing all over this place right now.
That's fine. That's the audience for it. But yeah, I mean, Kodi itself is playback software, so it has a wide codec support for a bunch of different video and audio and picture formats. and it is an interface. That's really what it's mostly about. It gives you this, what they call the 10-foot interface, which is big, large icons that you can easily thumb through with a remote control rather than a keyboard or a touchscreen type of thing. And it's also a metadata gatherer. So for whatever videos and music and pictures that you already have, it will go out to the standard metadata holders like the movie DB or the TV DB or IMDb, and it will gather posters and descriptions and what actors are in it and that type of stuff. So that's what the software does. And none of that, of course, is illegal. And if it's your own videos, if it's your own ripped music, because technically ripping DVDs and Blu-rays is still not right under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in the USA anyway. But if it's your own content and all you're using Kodi for is an interface, a playback device, playback software, and metadata gathering, you're good to go. But the thing about Kodi is that it is open software. It's free, it's open source, anybody can do whatever the heck they want to it. Plex used to be XBMC. That was a group of guys who took the open source XBMC, which is what Kodi is. Kodi used to be called XBMC, which stood for Xbox Media Center, because that's where it first started, was on the original Xbox, the first one. But the guys at Plex, they took that open source code and they ended up creating Plex out of it. And now they've stepped away from that original code and done it on something completely different. But there are a plethora of things. There's OpenELAC, which had its roots in XBMC. So Kodi being completely open source, it means all kinds of people out there are playing with it. And so people are creating these extra apps that you can load onto it that let you go to places that stream illegal content or BitTorrent stuff or whatever it is. There's piles and piles of stuff that you can do with it. But Kodi itself is not responsible for any of that. So it's on you. The other side of it is, if you get an Android TV box like this Matricom, it will pull down its official apps from the Google Play Store, because it's just Android. It's the same as having an Android smartphone. You're going to the Google Play Store to get official apps. You can, if you want to, sideload unsupported third-party apps. That's on you if you want to do it and do illegal stuff that way. Within Kodi, Kodi has their own official add-ons. And add-ins and plugins and all that type of stuff. And if all you ever use are the official ones, you're fine. That's going to be your official CBS website, your official, AMC website, all the places that you can go on your computer and stream content directly from those channels. There's plugins for every single one of those within Kodi. And if you want to do it that way, you're 100% above board. So as far as legality goes, it is entirely on you. You would have to make the decision to get an unsupported, non-official third-party plugin. Is it easy to do? It certainly is. But itself, it's not built in. So that's Kodi.
Barney, is there any streaming content available in full 1080p with Dolby True HD or DTS HDMI audio? If not, is there likely to be in 2016? Doesn't Kaleidoscape do this?
Kaleidoscape does, yeah.
Kaleidoscape would be the one that I can think of. Kaleidoscape has their own, like, you buy the DVD and it downloads to their box.
I mean, it's almost bit for bit identical to the Blu-ray.
To the Blu-ray, yeah.
Although so there's still only a couple studios releasing it that way, sadly.
Yeah. So you got like 10 grand, dude? Because that's what it's going to cost.
Yeah. Yeah, Kaleidoscape, you're right. That's the only one, because like even Vudu, is still, like we were mentioning, it's Dolby Digital Plus.
Yeah, even with the Atmos stuff.
Yeah, MGO, which is the big 4K player that's partially owned at least by Samsung and Western Digital, they are using DTS HD high resolution, not DTS HD master audio. So in both of those cases, it is still lossy, technically. It's higher quality, it's higher bit rate, it's better quality than original Dolby Digital or original DTS, but it's still not all the way to lossless True HD or DTS HD master audio. So will any of those services be upgrading to full lossless in 2016? I highly doubt it. I'm really hoping that MGO and Vidity do. I'm really hoping.
Yeah, those are your best hopes.
Yeah.
Is those two.
And that's not, I mean, Vidity wrote me back on Twitter and they're like, it's totally possible. Like, there's nothing about Vidity that says you can't have lossless audio. They're just not doing it right now. That's all. So,
okay. Yeah. All right, Bill the Stumper. This is the guy who had the. Remind me if he had one subwoofer or two.
I believe it's only one because it was a either a PB or a PC 13 Ultra from SVS. I remember it was an Ultra, and I think it was just one.
All right. He says he has an update on his weird double hit subwoofer problem. You remember it only worked. It only happened like with a couple of Roku things and nothing else, or
Well, it
something.
was it was his Roku 3, it was his Apple TV. It started with Netflix and Daredevil, but it was all kinds of stuff. And he confirmed that even with local content off of a USB stick, it still happened. At which point
Yeah,
we said, "Well, your Roku 3 is to blame." That's what we said. That's where we
yeah,
left it last time.
that's where we left it. He's tested several more things, including using a different sub and playing content on a new Roku 4. The
Yeah.
problem persisted.
God.
So if you think about it, it can't be the Roku, it can't be the sub,
Right.
right? So what's left? The receiver. There's
Yeah.
nothing else, right?
Yeah.
So he finally decided to rerun Audyssey just in case, and it worked. However, now there is some sibilance in the highs that wasn't there before. He was thinking of running Audyssey again to try to fix that, but how could Audyssey have been the cause of the subwoofer in the first place? Gremlins. I'm going with Gremlins.
I mean, especially because it has never, ever happened from his Blu ray player playing an actual Blu ray disc.
Ninjas. It was ninjas. Blu-ray. Blu-ray ninjas.
Bill, you're still the stumper because I can't answer.
Your house is possessed. Poltergeist.
I don't even think it was I'm thinking this is like a coincidence. I mean,
No, computers are weird. That happens sometimes. What do I always say? I have had this. Now I know that the IT crowd, to show the IT crowd, they always pick up the phone and say, "Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again?" That is the solution to 90% of the problems out there, and you have just done that. You reran Audyssey. So why is it sibilance? I don't know. Gremlins, ninjas, something. Rerun it. Turn it off. Turn it back on. Factory reset. Something. Do something like that. We don't know. Possessed by the devil. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you had told us previously that this happened regardless of source, right? And maybe at that point I would have said, like, just try plugging your iPod directly into your subwoofer and playing a bass sweep and seeing if that does it, just to rule out the subwoofer being the problem, right? But that wasn't the case. It was like from different source to different source, his sub wasn't doing this. So, I mean, Audyssey is a universally applied thing. I mean, the only thing I can possibly think of is somehow had he configured it so that on certain HDMI inputs, Audyssey was deactivated, because you can do that. You can set it up so that on certain inputs, Audyssey is on and certain inputs, Audyssey is off. Otherwise, if Audyssey
that still doesn't explain why it was double hitting.
It really doesn't. It really, really doesn't. I don't know, Bill. I can't explain it for you. I'm glad you found a solution.
Little itty bitty people living inside your subwoofer that occasionally kick it.
Yeah. As far as the sibilance in the highs, I'm assuming he's using the Audyssey reference curve, or what is sometimes called the movie curve, depending on how it's labeled in your particular model. If you are and you're still hearing sibilance, because those curves, the reference curve or the movie curve, should have a little bit of high frequency roll off, specifically to get rid of that. If you're using the flat curve or the music curve and you're hearing some sibilance, then switch it to reference or movie, because that should give you some high frequency roll off. But if this is the case, you're already using the reference one, try running it again and try making very sure that the microphone is at tweeter level. Because, of course, they tell you to have it at ear level, but ear level doesn't necessarily mean tweeter level.
It should be tweeter level if you're sitting in the right place, but maybe it's not with your speakers in your seats. So, especially if you bought IKEA couches in American-sized speakers.
Yeah. So if you put the microphone at ear level, but that's actually below or above tweeter level, that could explain Audyssey EQing the treble upwards, because it's saying, hey, I'm outside of the vertical dispersion window, so I'm going to boost up the high frequencies, and that could cause that. So try setting the microphone. You can take 8 measurements, just make sure that at least some of them have the microphone at tweeter level, and that should prevent that sibilance problem.
All right. What time is it? We got time. Shannon is itching to buy some speakers. He's considering going 9.2 from his current 7.2 setup by adding front height speakers to his Denon AVR. What is the deal with front height speakers tonight? I am done talking
It's
about
the
these.
theme.
AVR X4000 setup, but he wonders if it's really worth it. Will the extra two speakers make that much of an improvement to the movie watching experience? Is there really any 9.2 content to watch? Well, first of all, not for your receiver. There's not. The
Nope.
X4000 doesn't have Atmos.
Well, there's the grand total of 3 DTS Neo X encoded Blu-rays.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There.
So no, there's none. But you can use your up
There's
mixer. They don't call it that, but shut up. What are those movies, Rob?
Oh, they are Dread, which was good.
Uh,
Step Up All In, which is the fourth Step Up movie, and the Expendables
Shut up.
2?
Expendables,
2.
shut up. Shut up. Because they were
Expendables
all
2.
terrible.
Because Expendables 3 is in Atmos, I think. I might be mixed up on that.
Terrible movies. Anyways,
Dread was good.
Dread was good. I own that one. The only thing that kind of bothers me about Dread is the camera quality changes. Like the image quality, like from shot to shot. Like it'll show in one shot and it'll get grainy, and it'll show another shot and it'll be nice and crisp. I'm like, I understand if you do that for a reason, but I couldn't quite figure out the reason. And I didn't notice it when I watched it on Netflix.
Yeah.
But I certainly did on Blu-ray.
Well, it's a highly stylized visual movie, so
It is, but if you're gonna be highly stylized, why is it switching from grainy to not grainy every once in a while? So I have only watched it once on the Blu-ray, and I just love that movie. It's a great movie. Anyways, so none of this, no, except for Dread, there's no movies out there that you would want to buy on that actually have 9.2 encoded or 9 speaker encoded content. But that doesn't mean that those speakers won't be used. They just, you have to put them in there, and then the little surround decode up mixer thingy will do it, whichever one you use, Neo X or whatever it is.
So may I suggest, rather than front heights, he try front wides? I mean, maybe
Yes.
positionally, those aren't even an option in his rig.
That might be it. Well, front
entirely
wides are harder
possible.
to
Yeah.
sell, I think. But front wides, the idea is that if you think about where your first reflection is supposed to be, and we're always saying absorb it, absorb it, absorb it, get rid of it, even though some of the more recent research from Dr. Poole says, well, maybe those are kind of important. Well, front wides, basically, Audyssey or whomever is going to take that and take your information and give you from the front wides what that first reflection should be in order to give you the most spacious and well dispersed sound.
Yeah.
So according to Rob and many other people, front wides make more difference than front heights.
That was my experience anyway. Yeah.
But if you can, if you only have the choice of one, well, that makes a difference. I don't know. I'm not in your room. I don't know what your speakers sound like. I have no clue if it's going to make a difference.
The X4000 tops out at 9 speakers. That's the maximum it can run is 9 speakers. You can make the 8th and 9th speakers either front heights or front wides. That's what you can do with them. Or you could do 5 traditional speakers, nix the surround backs, and have front heights and front wides. That's another 9 speaker setup that you could do. But yeah, that was the setup I was running before I had an Atmos capable receiver. I had both front heights and front wides, and my experience was I could have totally done without the front heights. To me, they didn't add a tremendous amount that I ever really noticed or appreciated. However, I liked the front wides using particularly the Neo X, the DTS Neo X up mixer. I preferred that over the Audyssey DSX up mixer, which is the other option for adding either wides or heights in your case. So yeah, I would not bend over backwards or spend any money to add front heights to a 7.2 setup unless you're going immersive. Once you start getting actual discrete rendered sounds up there, it makes more of a difference. But when it's just the Dolby Pro Logic 2Z up mixer doing it,
well, part of this is I think really the height speakers were the idea, at least in my mind, was always that people with large screens, regardless of if they were big TVs or projection screens, at times were feeling like their sound was just too low and they wanted to bring it up to the top of that screen. So if you're not experiencing that, whatever. But then again, you can put those speakers up there and call them front heights and then eventually upgrade your receiver and you're ready to go for immersive audio.
Right. Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if they're already up there,
won't do you a damn bit of good when you get to immersive audio.
Not
be
really.
moving those speakers.
I mean, in actual Atmos soundtracks, they can use the front wide speakers, but in the Dolby Surround up mixer, the front wide speakers are never used. On the DTS side, if and when they ever bring out their bloody firmware update for DTS-X, DTS-X encodes themselves can use front wides, and the new DTS Neural X up
Mm.
mixer. I've looked at the manuals, I've read through them. They all indicate that front wides can be used. So it looks like they took Neo X and they've just added to it rather than subtracting anything from it. So theoretically, front wides could still be used in the future with immersive audio, but they do not add the real intended effect, which is overhead sounds. That's what immersive audio is really mostly about. So,
Right.
yeah. I mean, one thing is when you're doing up mixing to just add front heights, like in the case of the X4000, all it's doing is guessing, right? It has to take the traditional surround layout or the traditional stereo sound and guess based on phase and delays what sounds might be coming from higher up. Whereas there's more sounds potentially that could be panning into your surround speakers. So front wides just sitting in between your front speakers and your surround speakers, you're more likely to get sounds that will pass through that location. So there's more information for those up mixers to work with. That's my theory of why I preferred the front wides to the front heights. I think there's probably more for them to do, to be honest.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, Alan ordered a replacement bulb for his Epson from Bulb Solutions, and he did this through Amazon, and that was for $134. That was represented as an ashram lamp. It didn't have any Epson markings on it, so he asked for a refund. The Bulb Solutions rep said that he will take it back, but it really is an ashram.
Okay.
All right. Since the lamp assembly is just a lamp, metals, and wires, is there any benefit to buying a $250 Osram bulb directly from Epson or from Lamp Genie, or is it reasonably safe to expect a lamp labeled as Osram from other sellers like Bulb Solutions? He doesn't want to feel like he's saving money if he's really just throwing $134 away on a dim lamp with a short life. Yeah, it is super duper hard to know, Alan. It really, really is super duper hard to know. You have to read those reviews really carefully from people who have gotten it, and see what they say, because that's about the only way that you can do it. I know from what is it, the Lamp Genie? Is that where
Yeah,
the
Projector Lamp Genie.
Projector Lamp Genie or whatever it is? They have the OEM one, which is the one directly from the company. That one's usually quite expensive, and then there's their diamond or platinum bulb that's labeled for them.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a drop-in replacement for whatever the OEM was. It's usually about half price. And then there's the other one, and whatever that other one is usually cheapest chips, and the reviews on Amazon will be absolutely awful. Now,
Yep.
the reviews, you just have to be really careful. Ray has used these bulbs quite a bit, and the ones that are directly from Lamp Genie, that are Projector Lamp Genie, whatever it's called, their branded ones have been consistently good for him.
Right.
I've only bought one lamp. I bought it from eBay from freaking Hong Kong when I was in Australia, so I am no help here. But replacing a lamp, you got to remember there's two possible ways that you could replace it. Sometimes they send you just the lamp, just the bulb.
Oh, yeah, there's that. Yeah, no housing.
No housing. If they just send you the bulb, which is what they did for me, you have to know what you're doing. And the first thing is you cannot touch it. Don't touch it. Well, like it in. You have to wear gloves or use a clean cloth to pick it up, because if you get your oils, the oils from your hands on the bulb, it can reflect that heat and that light back in and burn the bulb out very, very quickly. And we're talking anywhere from months to minutes. You can, depending on the strength of the bulb. And when I was in theater and running lights and stuff like that, you learn that real quick. The first time you do it wrong and they turn the light on and it pop, everybody looks at you like, what? Like, did you touch that with your fingers? Well, how else was I supposed to get it in? And then you get the lecture. Okay, those things are expensive. So The other way you get it is you get the entire housing. You take out the old housing, you put the new housing in. It's a drop-in replacement. You never have to really think about it. So those cheaper lamps, a lot of times they're just giving you the lamp, and you have to figure out how to get it into the housing. So just be aware of what you're getting and
Yeah.
how much work it is going to be. Is it hard? No, no. I had never seen this housing before. I went, what? I have to put this thing in here, and it was really easy. It didn't take me any time at all.
Yeah, so I mean, what he's saying, because like Epson do not make lamps, right? They have an OEM. It'll be Philips, it'll be Osram, there's a couple other companies that are the OEMs for lamps. So like in this case, obviously Alan's done a little bit of research and realized that hey, for his particular projector, the lamps are actually the OEM is Osram. Right?
Right.
So he's like, okay, I bought this one. The Bulb Solutions guys say, yes, this is the Osram lamp, not amp. And it doesn't have Epson markings on it because it's not one that they sold to Epson that Epson resold to you, right? So if you went to Projector Lamp Genie and you bought their Diamond range version, that would be the same case.
Right.
It would be the original lamp. It would be the same lamp as what Epson would sell you. It just wouldn't say Epson on it. It would say Projector Lamp Genie Diamond. That's the name that would be printed on the box because they went to the same OEM. They got the same lamp. They put their brand on it instead of Epson's brand, and they sold it at a lower markup. That's what they're doing with that range. So if the guy's telling you flat out this is an original Osram amp, if he's lying to you, then he's lying to you. Okay, I don't know what I can do about that. But honestly, if it really is, then they're not doing anything different than what Projector Lamp Genie is doing with their Diamond range. So I would be perfectly fine with that. They're going to the original OEM, just putting their own brand on it instead of, Epson or whatever other brand name of the projector. That's kind of where I would stand on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a rep from Epson told him that the claimed 4,000 lamp life really is the typical lifespan and not just marketing. What have we observed? Is this BS or not BS?
I mean, I
Okay.
would generally say not BS. I mean, the lamps don't die, but they get dimmer gradually, is the thing. So, how sensitive are you to it? Because some people, it's a 4,000 hour lamp life, and sure enough, that projector will keep running for 4,000 hours and longer. Because they're actually stating that the half brightness is what they're stating with that number. That's how long it should take before the lamp is half as bright as when it was new. So the projector will absolutely keep working. I mean, I have a Sanyo that I've had for like over a decade. It still functions. It's just dim as all get out because I never replaced the lamp.
Right.
But it's not like the lamp died on me. So I would, in general, I'd say it's not BS that the lamp will physically last that long. But how sensitive you are to the gradual dimming of the lamp is a question. Because some people are, after 800 hours, they're like, well, it's not as bright as when it was brand new. It's too dim for me. So, they're saying that's how long it'll be until it's half as bright.
Yeah, 4,000, it all depends too on how well you take care of your projector. I mean, that it should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. If you do not have that battery backup, if you're not regularly cleaning and or replacing your
So many people
filters,
never clean the filters. So many people don't.
I have to. My house is, I mean, I don't know if there's a dog that used to live in here or what, but it's just, I have to. But yeah, that's just you. It depends on how well you take care of it. 4,000 hours is definitely something you can get out of there.
Yeah.
Lastly, the rep was actually very helpful and helped. This is the Epson rep. Helped
Yeah.
Alan to reseat the lamp holder, which involved unscrewing the lamp housing and readjusting it to seat properly. Turned out they didn't need a new lamp at all, and he shouldn't have because he only had 245 hours on it.
Yeah, there you should not be needing a new lamp.
No, after 200 hours, dude, you would have had to do something like lick that lamp before you put it in there. One would think.
Well, I mean, if you had a massive power surge and it had exploded it,
oh yeah,
yeah. But he's talking
it's
like
not
nothing.
beyond the realm of possibility. But let's be realistic here. You shouldn't. I mean, the chances of you needing something, you'd have to be that other dude with the guy, Bill. You'd have to be Bill, the stumper, to have that kind of problem. So, yeah. All right, that's everything.
So worth the call. I will say, Epson, in general, very good customer service. Very good on their warranty stuff. Like they honestly, genuinely stand behind So when they say that we have a 3-year warranty with a replacement program, like they stand behind that stuff. It's a pretty good experience buying a projector from Epson. I have to give them credit there.
Yeah. All right. We're done. That's it. We're completely
I
caught
know.
up except
Holy
for stuff that
cow.
happened. I told you we were going to be able to get through this today.
We
So,
still have all the snake oil things that were sitting there, but they've been
yes, we have
keeping for
many
a while.
stakeholder things, but we do not have time for them, and I haven't read any
No.
recently. Yeah, there's so much stuff that we could talk about. But we do want to thank our listeners of the week,
Mm-hmm.
Shannon for his donation, James for the laptop, and Bill, who talked us up to Emotiva. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very nice. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. You want to get your question answered in the podcast, feel free to ask. You can email us at rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com, or question@avrant.com, where we get that will go to our producer, Austin. Austin has his own podcast. We watch movies. It's a very interesting podcast. It's all about tortilla chips, believe it or
Woo!
not. Tortilla chips.
Yummy.
The making,
Making.
how to keep them fresh for longer.
Ooh.
Other dips that you can use them with that are not guacamole
Salsa.
or salsa. There you go. It's a very interesting podcast. You guys should check it out.
I'll remind people that the at Austin Pond handle is Austin with an E.
Yes.
I noticed someone sent an email where they're like, "Hi, Rob, Tom, and Austin," and they spelled it with an I. I'm like, oh, we haven't been reminding people it's Austin with an E.
You can leave us a comment at www.avrant.com, or you can also click on the link to buy us a cup of coffee and leave us a PayPal donation, which we always appreciate. You can go to facebook.com/avrantpodcast. That's all one word. And you can go to, Rob already mentioned Twitter for Austin at Austin Pond, and at First Reflect for Rob, and at avrant_Tom for me. And then G+ and all that crap. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Mantry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
All right, guys, after party starting momentarily. I will not be sticking around for long, so jump in quick.